Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Welcome back to another
Episode of Debatable with your hosts
Nina.
and Kyle.
It's been a while.
Is that how we used to do it?
No, it's a little bit more fluid than that.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Turn it to AI, actually.
Yeah.
It's not
Actually,
us.
this is ChatGPT. We're just like, anyway, I'm not gonna say anything. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Debatable with your hosts, Nina and Kyle. I'm Kyle.
I'm Nina.
We just did it again.
Well, that was a lot better. Anyway, today's episode is about derusting.
Yeah.
Which we need a lot of.
We need it. I remember I was talking to one of the people from our partner institutions, and he was sort of telling me like, oh, before you guys left, before you ended the podcast, we used to have watch parties where they would go to one of the members' condos and just listen to the podcast. And I was like, oh my god. And I was like, yeah, we do intend to relaunch the podcast, but we have no idea how to do it anymore. So what do you do? Like, we should try to be interesting every minute. Like, every 30 seconds, there needs to be something I'm gonna go like, oh, I'm hooked back in. I'm back in.
That's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Also, watch parties, I did not know were a thing. Very flattered. I do know, like, when we first launched, right, a lot of people would listen to us while they were like cooking and showering. But to have a watch party is a little intense. I love it. I'm not sure we ever intended that, but I think we should have seen it coming. You know?
No, I mean, I never saw it coming because I suppose it's like a radio drama, right? Like, you have a watch party for the latest episode of the radio
drama?
No, I imagine that back then when radio dramas were a thing,
Okay.
people would do that. But it never occurred to me that someone might have been super into the podcast that they would actually
Gather people, right?
Yeah, and I'm always surprised when someone goes, oh, we did this for the podcast. Like, you mentioned that someone used to listen to us in the shower, and do you remember the person who did that?
Yeah, hi, Theo!
Oh, it's another person.
Yeah,
It's a
I stopped to mention because it was weird having us in the shower. And I'm like,
That's
so,
very fair.
absolutely.
That's very fair. But, like, the person that I'm referring to didn't know us.
Oh.
So I was at a tournament, and one of the people there didn't know me. I was just like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm judging. And they recognize you from my voice. And they're like, oh, are you from the podcast? And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I'm always shy when someone asks you about that. Like, yeah. And they said, oh, I was just listening to you in the shower this morning. And I was like,
how recent or long ago was this?
like, during the before times. And
okay.
Yeah, we're so active. But anyway, back to the person I was talking to. I was like panicking. I was overthinking. Should we turn into Mr. Beast and go, yeah, we recreated, for this episode, we recreated all of the debate speeches from the whatever, and we put it into an AI or something like that. Uber sensational every 30 seconds. And they said, you know what, man, just be yourself. I was like, but who am I?
Okay, different problem altogether.
Yeah, so derusting. I don't consider myself rusty because I think, like, in general, it's not something you think about, right? Like, you never go through life and you're just walking down the sidewalk and go, oh, you know what? I'm rusty at riding a bike today, right? And that's the reason why you don't notice how rusty you are until you end up doing a robot voice as your intro.
I mean, it's been, officially 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Since the last episode we ever posted, which was last year, 2021, right?
No, 2022, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. 2022 March.
Yeah.
And it's been, like, I did the math, it's been 1.5 years. And, I mean, there's different ways to be rusty, right? And you're right, you don't really notice when you get rusty. Like, it just happens. The reason rust forms is because you've been ignoring the skill the whole time, which obviously we can't say is super true for us because we've both been actively coaching in, or at least I have been.
You've been very active.
I've been very, I mean, for those who don't know, like, I still work as a debate coach, and I've been working with younger kids than, like, my usual age bracket of coaching. So
Would you say that you're a better coach now than you were last year?
definitely. I'm a better coach, but that's why I mentioned before you were recording that I'm so rusty in debating, but I'm not at all rusty in debate, which is a completely different thing in my head.
Yeah, so what's the difference?
So I think debate means applying the skills and knowing how to piece together information, knowing how to organize information. But debating is the actual, like, how do you deal with competitions? How do you prepare with a partner? How do you write a speech? How do you say your speech in 7 minutes? How do you train for a debate tournament? How do you conduct yourself at the debate tournament? How do the Discord buttons even work now? Like, I don't know. I have not done an online competition in...
I have an online
Yeah,
competition.
you have. I've done physical competitions, which I feel like was a lot more de-rusting because it was my first competition again after 2019. Like, before, the last time I did a physical tournament was before the pandemic. And not only did I have to deal with doing a physical tournament, it was a pro-am. And for those who don't know, it means I partnered up with a student, so much younger. It was in person in a big university where I had to do a lot of walking during preparation time.
Yeah, you kids
Don't
don't know
know.
how good you have it. Actually, no, like, they're trade-offs, right? Because
Obviously.
on one hand, you don't make new friends. Like, you don't gather in a group and, like, oh, let's... What did people used to do?
They just chit-chat, honestly.
Like chit-chat with 5 different people in front of you. And like, with their... So how was your round? How was your round? I feel like people still do that
They do.
through Messenger,
Right.
but it's a different thing when, like, you're face to face and you're
Yeah, and
"You
you're
have a round."
waiting for the results of the round, right? Because
Yeah.
you end up being sent out by the judge or judges.
And then, like, in the hallway,
Yeah, and in the yes.
you're just walking through the hallway. It's like, oh, kumusta round, man? Yeah.
Yeah, so not only did I have to deal with walking around again, but, and for those who don't know, I just got back from, like, a job in Shanghai. So I did both my physical tournaments in Shanghai, and I also had to deal with some language barriers. And I've done international competitions before, and it's not that hard because debate is a very English-centric activity, and most, if not everyone you meet at a tournament needs to learn how to speak English, at least long enough to survive a 7-minute speech. But it's still very different. Like, it's different culture. I had to adjust. I did not understand the jokes that were being made all of the time. Some
Like
references.
what?
So I don't even know. There's just a lot of cultural differences. Very subtle cultural differences, right? Like, for instance, I do not know how to... Like, I keep asking for their Facebooks. Facebook's not a thing in Shanghai, okay? You ask for
yeah.
WeChat. Yeah, so there's that kind of weird barrier. The funniest one is I've seen many instances where right before people would do their physical speeches, they would say,
Am I audible?
POIs.
Be in the chat.
No, not in chat. POIs through voice. And I was like, "What's about? Do I pass you a post-it note? Like, what do you want me to do?" So, yes, I'm not rusty in the debate sense. If anything, my coaching and judging have just gotten so much better. And you're kind of forced to do that when you're dealing with kids who you gotta organize their thoughts for them. And that's normal. I think it's constantly training me because I'm like, what is this kid saying? Like, this kid is 10 years old. Like, what argument are they trying to make? And it does...
10 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I teach debaters that are probably 10 to 17, like right before high school. which has been very enlightening.
10 years, I thought I started young at 12 years old, but 10 years old is like I was in 4th grade.
We do have, they're not learning debate, but they are learning already at that age how to construct arguments, like ideas, like cats are better than dogs, the very classic debates that you would use as examples for children, because they are actual children.
So it's like public speaking for...
Definitely. Like maybe public speaking, but they are organized in a way an argument would be. Like there's a claim, there's reasoning, evidence.
That's good, because I would have needed something like that in grade school, because I don't know, like I mentioned several times, I don't know if like people are just now listening or if they don't know, but like I mentioned several times that I used to be like I used actions and sometimes like violent actions over words and expressing myself. So I got into therapy, and then in 6th grade I was kind of chill, and then like they asked me to, oh no, I think this was 5th grade. They asked me to run for student council, and a student council in San Beda Alabang grade school was a rigged process. Like, you don't run on your own. Like, the teachers select you, and then you're part of a pool, and they make you audition, basically an audition to see like how good you are at public speaking. And I've never done public speaking. I didn't particularly have stage fright, although I do remember when like I don't know how to speak in front of a crowd. Like, I'm not afraid of it, but I don't know how to do it. So they asked me about what my platforms were in the audition, and I was like, what freaking platforms? Like, other people are like prayer and work and all these other things, like a whole bunch of nothing burgers, right? Nothing burgers. But I was like, I would clothe the naked, feed the hungry, just like Jesus. But I said it like it was very smooth. But back then I'd be like, I would feed the hungry, like that. I didn't make it past the auditions, but I just want you to know, if you are a grade schooler from San Beda, your student council elections are rigged. They had 2 parties. There was like, I think there was the yellow party and then the red party, but then they're the same. They stand for exactly the same things. There's the red ravens and then the yellow bedans or whatever, but they're the same. They do the exact same thing. This got completely away from me. Oh yeah, backtracking. I would have needed one of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think derusting in life or in debate is kind of like something that should come naturally, but I haven't found it coming naturally to me. And I think a good anecdote for that, or just so you understand how hard it is for me to naturally get back into something, is I had to relearn how to ride a bike. And whoever said you never forget how to ride a bike is kind of correct, in that I know the act, okay? Like, my body knows what's gotta do. I gotta push the pedal. I gotta make sure that my arms are in a particular position, that I don't tip over, that my legs know what to do to stop. But it's very different. Like, it's still very frustrating that I'm not able to go as fast as I want, that I'm still anxious. And I feel like when I went back into debating and actually giving speeches in a non-classroom setting, not for demonstration to kids, not so that I could just play around or just have fun with it. When I went into an actual competition, you don't have stage fright, maybe, but I remember having a lot of it. There was the last elimination round before breaks. And for those who don't know or are new to debate, right, usually there's like 4 rounds that you have to do to determine if you break, which means you proceed to the next set of
elimination rounds.
Yes, to the actual elimination rounds. And that last round I did, it was in front of the whole auditorium. Like, we got the main room, which is normal. It happens a lot in tournaments.
Yeah.
does not mean anything. It's just another room used to save on costs, to make sure that it's being used. And what happened was I choked a little. Like
Literally choked.
Yeah, because I was projecting. I don't know how to do that anymore. I'm only speaking in classrooms. I'm only speaking in front of my laptop. I had to project, and I remember spit going up, and I was like,
Oh,
"Is
no.
it? I'm gonna die." Literally choke in my speech. I mean, I survived. I broke. It was good.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, I broke in both tournaments. Not as high as I would have wanted, but that's just like the internal pressure talking. And obviously, there's no shame whether I broke or not.
Yeah, that's a different episode.
Yeah. Like in derusting, I feel that there were so many parts I was not even aware were rusty. Like my public speaking skills, which I'm very proud of, took a hit because I was not projecting as much as I wanted to. I felt like my hand gestures were unnatural, and I don't blame myself. It's been years since I've had to stand up and give a speech. Since the pandemic, I've just been sitting on my ass in front of the computer or laptop, and it's also hard to write everything.
Yeah.
In 7 minutes, I've been spoiled by Google Docs or just any.
Oh, true.
Instrument.
You had to handwrite your.
Yeah, I mean, devices were not allowed. That was really hard to enforce because a lot of people brought their laptops and iPads thinking it would be like an online tournament. And this is their first physical tournament as well. So they didn't know the rules,
I actually
right?
think that maybe tournaments, even on-site tournaments, should allow people to bring their laptops.
We tried that immediately after round one. No, people were just generating their speeches on ChatGPT.
So there should be like a signal jammer. And like, no, you are not allowed to go on the internet. You are not even allowed to call your family. You are stuck here.
No, but I mean, we technically did have a signal jammer against ChatGPT. The tournament was in Shanghai, but people have VPN. So
No, I meant like a signal jammer, as in
no internet. Then
like,
how will?
oh crap. Yeah, but if people were gonna submit tab using the internet anyway, then regardless of what you do, there is a risk of using ChatGPT.
I know. There is always a risk, but it's
easier.
easier.
It's easier to get away with it when it's on your laptop. Laptop. That's even worse. Laptop. As opposed to like you're reading from your phone the generated speech.
Yes, and it's easier to spot during prep time because everyone's supposed to just be in paper. So there are runners and people walking around. They will see if you are on a device you're not supposed to be on.
Yeah, but it's just that for some people it might be easier, especially for if you have a disability, right?
Yeah,
like if you have carpal tunnel.
I've been having considerations for them, but I think there is still a skill that comes with writing your speeches down that I don't want to lose.
That's true.
And I don't want it to rust forever. So
That's true.
I am glad that people are learning how to be a lot more succinct. What do you have?
Succinct?
A lot more straightforward with their notes.
Yeah.
And it's part of public speaking. You don't want to have to rely on writing everything word per word, like paragraphs and writing your speech verbatim, right?
Haha, sorry, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, that is you. But we do encourage like people using bullet points and phrases and mind maps and...
No one uses flowcharts in their speeches anymore.
Oh, I mean, my school does because we literally print out, like here, we call them flow sheets. And here is like an argument structure that you can follow. I mean, we are teaching kids. Everything has to be very spelled out for them.
Yeah.
And that's helped me keep the rust away. Right? So, recap, my rust isn't that bad in general, but I found myself in a situation or multiple situations where I got to really see up front. There's still a lot of things I have to work on. So, for you guys listening, whether you're starting debate or in the middle of debate, or maybe you're semi-retired. We can't claim we're retired. We're back. Literally.
Like, that's like the worst time to claim that we're retired.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
100%. But if you are finding yourselves kind of stuck or finding it hard to regain the progress you've made, I do have a few tips. And I think you have two. Do you want to share one of them?
No, actually, before that, I wanted to ask you, because you relearned how to ride a bike. My question for you was, how long did it take for you to relearn it versus how long did it take for you to first learn how to ride a bike?
Oh, when I first learned how to ride a bike, I think it took me a day or two.
How about relearning?
Relearning, surprisingly, took me much longer.
Oh,
It took me a week. And that was because I was very scared. I feel like there's a lot more hesitation as an adult of making a mistake. Which, I know this is going deep and there's probably some, like, who what you can get there or whatever. But in general, I think it's because I was a lot more anxious. I was setting expectations for myself. And honestly, that situation is a little bit unique because I was like biking in main roads with cars.
that
So
might have been
biking
it.
and commuting. So I challenged myself like every day for a week. I was biking 2 kilometers to the same spot. So same route every morning. There were not a lot of cars. 2 kilometers to get to my friend's house because we would carpool together to work. And that was my exercise for the day. And at first, I remember, and I know you know this, Kyle, I only biked 1/3 of the way, freaked out, set the bike down. It was a rentable bike that you find anywhere in Shanghai, so don't worry. It's not like I was losing bikes left and right and just buying new ones.
That's hilarious.
That's so funny though. Like, how many bikes were sacrificed in this week? But no, I biked to 1/3 of the way, stopped, and then told myself, I'll try again tomorrow. Maybe I'll go a little bit further the next day. The next time I went halfway, and then I walked the rest of the way in defeat. And then the last day, I did it. It took me so much longer. It took me like 20 minutes for what was a 10-minute bike ride.
Yeah,
Supposedly.
but my point was like the time that you actually spent. Like, I don't. How long did you bike on each of those days?
Oh, the route itself is maybe 10 minutes.
Right? So you're like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So all in all, you biked for 20 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. Versus like the first time you learned it, which was 1 or 2 days, you actually did like, you spent more time on it.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess it's just fine tuning the things I forgot. It's
Yeah.
not like I was learning from scratch. It only took long because I made it take long, which it tends to happen, but I'm not gonna beat myself up for it.
So yeah, that's the first thing I want to talk about. I want to say about derusting, which is that when you're relearning something, the time it takes for you to relearn a skill is much shorter compared to the time that it takes for you to first learn a skill. And I learned this because I was CEO of a debate company this year. And one of the things that I did for that was I tried to think about the ways that we can make coaches in general better. So I studied a lot about educational psychology, and one of the things there is, the relearning curve. And it basically says that the learning curve for a new skill can be very steep, but if you're relearning a skill, the curve is much shallower, right? And so when you first learn from scratch, it takes you a few days or a couple of weeks in like,
debate
in
world,
debate.
it's like
Yeah,
just to get
to get
everything
to a
done.
7-minute speech,
Yes.
right? But if you're relearning something, then like that time is super shortened, and that's because of this idea of neural plasticity, which is when we're saying that something is plastic in the science sense, we're saying it's like it's easy to mold, to change it and adapt it. So for derusting, because you're essentially like reactivating neural pathways that may have become less active over time, right? So when you first learn a skill, your brain establishes those neural pathways first, and then if you don't practice that skill, they can weaken, but they're still there, right? So like you still have those pathways, and you just need to reactivate it, which is why the relearning curve is much shallower than the learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, when I did my first in-person debate speech, it was rough. And then after a while, I entered what I would call a state of flow. Like everything made sense. Everything was clicking. I feel like I was unlocking like doors in my head. Like, oh yeah, I remember doing this. Oh, this is how it feels like to shut down a POI. This is what it feels like to transition from answering a POI going back to my point. Like, it feels natural that something is waking up again. Is that is that a term? Like, something within me is waking up again after a deep slumber. And
Wow.
it felt very refreshed. It was, but it did need to stretch a little.
It was well rested.
It was well rested, but it needed to stretch a little. I had to remove the crust from its eyes, but it was rearing to go,
Yeah, the last online tournament that I was at, I was with a really good friend of mine who, number one, has been debating, or not has been debating, but started debating much, much earlier than I had. Like 7 years before I started debating, they were already debating. Like, okay, so if I was 12, what's 12 minus 5 years old? They were debating when I was 5 years old. And they had stopped for like 10 years. 10 years. And then we were still, when we were prepping, I was so amazed. They're like, how fast they were like making up arguments or thinking about framing and stuff like that. And we talked about it. I talked to another friend, a mutual friend of ours, about it. And they said that, yeah, the thing about rusting is what really rusts for people is manner, like the way that you deliver speeches, but the way that you think about problems. Once you start debating and you're into debating, you will almost always have this like debate type mindset when you're like thinking about how to solve a problem, right? And it just comes back to you when you need it.
I mean, sometimes it never leaves, right?
Yeah. I talked to someone who had retired, but still loved debating, right? But they never debated again. And they said, he was telling me about, people ask me, are you still in debate? And
They reply, debates in me.
hey, I didn't know you were there.
I mean,
No, you weren't there. Like, it was before I met you.
I know, that was a joke.
But yeah, it was before I met you, because like it doesn't necessarily translate to the.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the question isn't about whether I'm still in debate. It's about whether debate is still in me, and I get it. Like I use it at work. So I left the CEO position so I could focus on other work, and 10 other things, right? But when I left, now I'm in my other job, I do debate work all the time. Like, every single day at work, it's putting debate into practice, but probably, first of all, not in 7 minutes. And second of all, it's like, yeah, you know what? If you wanna do some framing for 10 paragraphs, do it. If you wanna have a 30-pronged policy, do it. Yeah.
That's a very specific job where you're allowed to do framing and policy.
But I feel like most of them.
I mean,
right?
if you are in like an administrative role or government role, then yes, right? But I guess, sure, when you're making presentations as well for your consulting job, whatever consultants do. Like, if you're a consultant, can you please email us like specifically what you do? I would really like,
because
please, I would
what
love
the
to know.
consultants do.
I don't know, but like, point is, they make some PowerPoints probably. I mean, I don't know what they do, but I'm sure.
God, you're like, hey, what's your job? And you're expecting my job is PowerPoint.
No, but like, you organize your thoughts in a way that debate teaches you. I find myself doing that. Admittedly, because my job is debate and teaching it's a natural thing that we use in literally everything. Literally, even our corporate structures, even the way we hold meetings as coaches, because it is a very formal, like, actual debate.
Yeah, like in a meeting, someone says something and you're like, you know what, I have 5 responses to that.
Exactly. Or someone will raise a POI in the middle of someone. They're not gonna say POI, but they're gonna raise their hand, and then the main person is like, "I'll call you later. Like, let me finish."
No, seriously?
Yeah.
It's Jesus.
Yeah, people got like their little note cards with prepared stuff. Like, it's all.
It's all debate.
Yeah, it's all debate. Like, but that's my industry, right? That's
Yeah.
literally my industry. So
But-
I'm fortunate that I didn't rust in that sense.
But 100% I get that. If you're a debater, you have to stop the urge to go, I have 5 responses to what you just said. And sometimes you are able to stop the urge. I often do not. So like the other day we had a case conference. I'm not gonna disclose any of the details of the case, obviously, but like there was an argument that was raised in the pleadings of the other party to the case, and the team leader was going like, okay, so what are we going to say about this? Like, how do you plan to attack this argument? I was like, in my head, I was like, from the moment I read that argument, I already had 5 levels of responding to this, and all of them had legal basis. So I was just like in the Viber, just like like 5 paragraphs of answer for that one thing, and there were like 10 other things that we needed to discuss. But at least for that one thing, I had 5 responses, and then they didn't respond to, like, they didn't even heart react it or anything, and I was, did I do something wrong?
Okay,
That's a me problem. But like the point is, you can use it in probably in your job. Even if you're like doing data stuff, you're gonna have to present that data to someone. So you're still going to have to think about framing. You're still gonna have to think about like, why does this matter? What's the what's the delta? What's the delta?
Yeah, so, I mean, skill application is still there, which I'm very fortunate about. And you're right, it's about something about things already being established and just reactivating again, right?
Yeah. So that's a huge thing, I think. And in fact, when you're relearning something, it's an opportunity for you to optimize. Because like I mentioned, it's about reactivating neural pathways. But in the process of doing that, you're also optimizing. Your brain is also optimizing. So it might even be one of those liberating limit situations where, okay, I'm limited right now, but because I don't remember the methods that I used to have when prepping, it frees you up to explore new things. It frees your brain up to make new methods that might be even better for you, right? And that can make you an even better debater than you first were. So this is there's a term for this in psychology. I think it's the Einstellung effect, where it's a psychological term that describes the tendency for people to rely on previously established solutions or methods, even when better alternatives are available. So it's a whole thing where, for example, we have a QWERTY keyboard, right? QWERTY, and that we got it from typewriters. Oh, maybe we should have typewriters in on-site debating.
No, very loud. And very bulky. What?
There are more quiet typewriters. But anyway, I lost it. Okay, yeah, so we have QWERTY keyboards because when we had typewriters, we want to make sure that none of the letters stick together. Right? We want to make sure that they don't stick together, which is why keys that are most likely to be used next to each other, they are not, like, they're far away. But we no longer use typewriters, and yet we still use the QWERTY keyboard, even though allegedly they're like better configurations of the keyboard.
Yeah.
And the reason why we just don't use them is because of the Einstellung effect, or path dependency, whatever you want to call it. So derusting also gives you this opportunity to overcome that effect. So it can lead you to breaking free from it, help you find new, more efficient ways to perform. So essentially, you want to break away from that tunnel vision. So if you are derusting, we recommend something like, you don't have to do it exactly the way that you did before. In fact, it might be better if you don't. because that version of you, the methods that you used before, that was because you're a different person. Now you know more things. You're probably a different person. You might not have noticed it, but the way that you think might have changed as well. So the optimal way of creating a speech might also be different for you.
Yeah, I think I've done a few of that in my time of derusting. I mean, I'm still derusting. And that's another thing. I don't think you can ever do enough derusting. After a few derusting stages, it just turns into polishing. But it's the same act, right? And I have been experimenting with different ways to prepare speeches, different paper sizes, which I know it's like, whoa, different paper sizes. Like, why are you doing that? Well, because in physical tournaments, it's a thing. I've tried small note cards. I've tried a big notebook. I've tried, you know what an A3 size is?
A3 is big.
It's huge. It's double
Double an A4.
Yeah. I mean, imagine those like side by side. I've tried paper like that. You know my handwriting is very tiny. Wasted a lot of paper, but I was experimenting a lot. And I found what was optimal for me now. And it's very different. You'd be surprised from what used to be optimal when we were teaming up together. So what do you think is my method now?
Of taking down notes?
Yeah, preparing for a debate. Like, you've seen, like, I use an A5. Like, one page of a notebook. Like, a big notebook. Almost one bond paper.
Okay, you fold the paper in 4.
Close. I fold it in half. So, I've cut down to half the size.
Half an A3?
No, half an A4. Right?
So that's an A5.
Yes.
So it's the same thing.
No. Half an A5, so an A6.
Oh.
Much smaller. Like,
much smaller.
almost a note card. But a little bit bigger than an index card. But the point is, like, it doesn't matter. The point is, I've written less. And it took me a while to adjust to, but I found that I prefer this because I'm writing less during preparation time. I'm more in the moment. I'm more able to help my teammate. But maybe that's also dependent on who I'm partnering up with. I've been partnering up with students, so it's a little bit more like guidance. I gotta be like the coach in the room. So there's really less time for me to write. But I've been able to survive. If anything, that is also a liberating limit. I have been tested to derust in hard mode, which means that I'm not just debating. I am debating and coaching and trying to break at the same time. I'm trying to do my own speeches, but I'm spending most of my time helping someone else, right? And I still have a job to do. I still got to mingle. I got to do everything one would usually do in a tournament, but a little bit more difficult. So that was my derusting experience.
Yeah, I get what you mean in terms of like methods, because when I did my most recent tournament, I also was like, okay, I don't want to be exactly the same as before because I'm not the same person. Like, I know so much more now, and I do so much more in real life with debating than I think most debaters, right? So I intentionally went like, okay, how do I debate on my own terms as opposed to like, how do I debate so I can win? And so like I did so many experiments about, oh, I'm gonna be as dramatic as I can. And by the end, I figured out like a way to do first speaker that works for me, which is like, I think people can tell that I get into tangents very easily, right? Because I think about what other people might say and then I add to that. So it might be like a completely different conversation by the time that I finish prep time. So what I end up doing is like, okay, let me think about the issues that might pop up, like what conversations will pop up in the debate, and then I group all those conversations together, and that's my first speaker. And at some point someone realized like, isn't that just whipping? And I was like, yeah, I whip at first speaker. And I was the only person in that tournament to have gotten an 80.
Nice.
Yeah, but at the same time, because I was experimenting and derusting, I also got a 72.
Oh, okay. I mean that comes with the territory for sure, and there's nothing bad with that. As long as you're
as long as I
having
had fun. Yeah, right?
Mm.
It was so fun. Honestly, like, derusting with a person who is also rusty is super fun. But even in the podcast, right? Like, we had zero prep time for this. Like, we both had, okay, let me just write down some stuff, my personal notes on the topic, but we didn't share it with each other. As opposed to before, like, we would write the episode together. Like, we had, like, green and yellow highlights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. I unlocked like some core memories there.
Like, green and yellow highlights, and then you talk about this, I talk about this, you're taking turns, and now it's like,
And sure, it was optimized, but I think we stopped having fun with it at one point. Don't get me wrong. We love the podcast. We paused for other reasons. We had other things on our plate. We're glad to be back. And again, this is also a big act of derusting for us. And we are in the midst of experimenting. We're using new programs. Same mic, but new programs, new way of organizing our thoughts. Maybe no organization of thoughts right now. And that's perfectly fine. We're also trying out different ways of speaking. I don't know if I used to speak like this in the podcast. I am using up my teacher voice. This is how I speak with my older students.
Yeah. Another way that we're experimenting is, before we would get, like, super duper duper upset when, like, things around us are happening while we're recording.
Oh yeah, if you hear like thumping, just ignore.
Like,
right?
because right now, like, 5 people, not 5 people, but like 2 other people are like walking up and down the stairs, and they're thumping, and like, this is new for me. I'm just trusting that the program will take care of it. And if it doesn't, I'm trusting the audience to just, like, say, you know what? At least they're back.
Yeah.
It's all about trust. That's the experiment. The trust is the experiment.
Okay, but if you want actual tips, really quick, rapid fire before we end this episode. Like tangible
We've been
things.
giving tips this whole time.
I know, but there's a few more I want to add. So one is get back to matter loading. I don't care. Like, everyone should be matter loading. If you're new to the term, I don't know if matter loading is still a word people use. It's been a while, but it's
research.
Yeah, research, reading up on the news. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to be writing it down in a little notebook or like reading a newspaper like a little businessman in the morning.
Like a little businessman.
But do integrate it in your social media. Maybe once in a while, fall down a rabbit hole. It's good for you. Another thing that's really helped me, this might be a surprise, read a lot of fiction. Not read a lot of nonfiction. Read a lot of fiction.
Just read a lot.
Yeah, but
in general.
I think fiction is a little special because you're just kind of taking in how things are written. Like, how are things expressed? What's a new angle to look at things? I mean, you can definitely have that in nonfiction as well, but I feel a lot of the nonfiction, at least when you say nonfiction, debaters interpret that as, I'm gonna absorb the information. No, I want you to absorb how they're communicated.
Yeah. So, in connection with that, I would say it's a kind of active learning. Like, you need to engage with the thing that you're consuming. So don't just like mindlessly take it in like a sponge, because you are not SpongeBob. I made a SpongeBob joke. Yeah, so don't just take it in like a sponge. Whenever you're reading something, go like, oh, is this true? How can I use this in a debate? Or how can I use this in another part of my life? Or why is this important? Or what you said, if it's a piece of art that's connecting with you, ask yourself, why and how is it connecting with you? Right? So by actively engaging with the material, number one, it helps you understand, like, how can you replicate it elsewhere? Number two, in the case of like facts, by actively engaging with it, you are also strengthening your ability to recall it. Because what's happening is, by asking yourself these questions, and probably by elaborating on them yourself or connecting them to something going on in your life or something you already experienced, you are, how do I say this? You are connecting this new material with
You're
something.
binding it with something.
Yeah, you're integrating new material, new knowledge with prior knowledge. And that makes it easier for you to connect to it. connect back to it and remember it, as opposed to like you're learning something that's completely different and super isolated from every other part of your experience. After you read that, give it a day or two, you will forget about that. And that's the reason why, for most people, when they, after the semester ends, they forget most of the things that they learned because they never really connected or applied it in their own lives. So, yes, please, for the love of God, actually, I really, really hope that people start matter loading or researching more because I strongly feel that people have become very, very, very reliant on info slides for basic information. Like, we talk about the average reasonable person as if it's a person who regularly reads the news. People are not average reasonable people anymore because they need a lot of people like need or expect an info slide for something that's constantly on the news and has been constantly on the news for more than a decade.
Yeah.
And this actually happened. I'm like, how do you not know what this is? This is older than ISIS. This is just as old as, this is older than you, and this is always on the news. So how do you not know this? But I think that your tip might be outdated, Nina, because your tip was like integrated into your social media. But social media has been, I'm not sure if this is like a policy of theirs, but I do notice that like news sites and opinion pieces are like not very platformed on social media anymore. Like the only things that you'll see are the ones that are really viral.
Oh, okay.
But the things that go viral are like, oh, there's personal drama, right? Or like someone, like something happens and then a pundit will spin it into something that's more dramatic or more sensational, but not necessarily important, right? Or something that is just unambiguously bad and not necessarily debatable, right? So those are things that end up being viral. And it's not really the news as it would have been when, if you're actually researching on stuff. So I do have a new app that helps me research more, and it gives me updates on like, it gives me updates for things that I'm missing or things that happen like across the world. It's called the Ground app. And the Ground app is like, it's all about the news, and it also looks at, I wish we were sponsored by the Ground app, honestly.
Hey, bro.
It looks at the news and also the way that different media sites are across the political spectrum, from far left to far right, how different news outlets cover this, how they frame or word the same story. And what I really like about it, again, I really hope that they sponsor us because I spent more than a minute. This should be an ad read. Like, they have a feature where it knows or it takes note of the things that you actually read and like where you are on the political spectrum, those types of news that you read, and then based on that information, sometimes it tells you, oh, here are your blind spots.
Oh, yeah. I remember using that when I was preparing for a tournament, and I was actually, I was making matter sheets for myself.
It's so useful,
it's
though,
so
right?
useful. Like, it summarizes it for you. It's great. Like, okay, end of the ad though. But this is my final, mega final tip. And that is just to get back on the bike. It's gonna be scary. If you really want to debate again, it doesn't matter. I am in debate. I am 26. Like, that is an old person in debate. Very old. Dinosaur level age. And I had to debate with like people much, much younger than me. But no one's gonna judge. No one cares. If anything, they're excited. And the community is just excited to be back. Back in, like, offline in my case. But a lot of people are still very much welcoming. And I hope you're welcoming of us being back. Like, we are a bunch of
Don't be ageist.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, someone called me debate mom. Not debate ate, debate mom. And I felt like, ooh,
People have been calling us debate mom and debate dad for a while.
I know, but they mostly refer to us as ate and Kuya Kyle and ate Nina.
Yeah, neither of those make me comfortable. And but what about Kuya? Like, can you just call me Kyle? And then afterwards, I told my father about this, and my father was saying like, can you chill with like insisting that no one call you like honorifics like Kuya or Sir or Attorney, because this person is like much younger than you.
Yeah.
So it might come off as creepy, and I was like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
it just makes me uncomfortable." Okay, like you have to accept it. Like when you get older, you're actually old.
Yeah.
Like you have to accept it at some point. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but like regardless of your age, just get back on it. If you don't need to join a tournament. That's not the only way to de-rust. But if you miss, for example, the way you think in debate or the way your adrenaline is pumping, there are other ways to do it. Maybe give yourself a time limit when you're writing like the outline for your paper, or maybe just give yourself an evening where you do nothing but read the news and pretend you're preparing for a tournament. There's so many ways for you to simulate and reactivate that little like debate version of you.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to do a tournament for that.
Here's another tip that I feel like, and this is something I'm seeking from experience. So let's say you have 3 skills, like oversimplification, but let's say that debating is about 3 things. It's about making arguments, it's about rebutting arguments, and let's say it's about framing or something like that, right? So if you feel like you are rusty in one of those skills, there is a tendency for you to go like, okay, let me just focus on that one skill. When really you should be practicing all 3 skills. Like, instead of just case building and going like, okay, I'm gonna make arguments, do a debate instead, where you practice all the skills that are associated with debating at the same time. Or when you're case building on your own, rebut yourself as well. Because there's this concept in education called interleaved learning, where research says that if you mix different but related skills or topics, it can help improve the retention of each thing that you learn for those topics, as opposed to block learning, which is just like, oh, it's just one skill, right? And like this happened to me because while I was derusting, I was like, I don't know how to prep arguments anymore within 15 minutes. So that's literally all I did. So when it came to the tournament, I didn't know how to rebut anyone anymore.
Oh,
like
no.
I mean, I still could, but I had to like actually listen and go like, okay, how do I respond to this? Whereas before, right, I could write an argument while listening to the other person's argument and then rebut it at the same time, so I could still multitask it. But like focusing on just one of those skills hurt my ability to relearn the other skills.
Yeah.
So do some interleaved learning. And the last thing I want to say is the most important thing for derusting is you have to believe that you can derust. Because self-efficacy, or the belief that what you are aiming to do is achievable, is so big. Like Nina said, the reason why it took her so long, like over the course of many different days, to ride a bike for 10 minutes, is because she's freaking out, right?
I was.
So never discount your mental state here. You have to believe that it's something that you can do, because that is a time where it becomes like, instead of something that you're beating yourself up for, like, why am I not derusting as fast as I want to, it becomes something that's more invigorating. Like, you're focusing on how far you're coming as opposed to how far you have left to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in yourself just yet, we believe in you.
Yeah. Believe in the Nina and Kyle who believe in you.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. It's the end of the episode.
If you are new, we highly recommend that you listen to our earlier episodes. It's a strange place to start. I mean, it's not. You can start anywhere, but we miss you. We're back.
Yeah.
We want you to know what we're back from. If you want to see just how different this is from when we were actually active and when we weren't derusting. We recommend listening to other episodes and comparing. You will find
Yeah.
that this is probably the most unstructured, but I'm very happy with this episode.
Yeah. But if you are not derusting and you just don't know the skill yet,
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of stuff for
we
that.
got a lot of stuff for you. And if that's still not enough for you, you can send us an email or send us a message to our various social media channels, and maybe we can set up some coaching for you. We recently launched a coaching program called Debatable With, where we partner with institutions that might not have coaching. So if that's something that you're interested in, let us know and we can set up like a schedule for you on a weekly basis. And this is part of our efforts to just make sure that debate really is for everyone.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's it for this episode of Debatable. We're so excited to get back on it and do like weekly things. Asterisk, not necessarily a promise right now, but we'll do our best. And as always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Ding ding. That's for me. I need to remember that I need to put
Oh,
ding
okay,
ding.
okay. You got it.
Okay, yeah, no, that's the wrong one. Which one is it? Got him.